Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fluent Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Fluent, and I'm so excited to have you with us today. This podcast is all about helping you improve your English through natural conversations, and today we have something really special for you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Emma is going to share her amazing English learning journey with us today. She's going to tell us all her secrets about how she improved her English, and trust me, her tips are going to help you so much.
Oh, you're too kind. But yes, I'm really excited to share what worked for me. Learning English has been such an incredible journey.
So, Emma, let's start from the beginning. When did you first start learning English seriously?
Well, I started about 3 years ago. I remember feeling so overwhelmed at first. There were so many things to learn. Grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. I didn't know where to start.
I totally understand that feeling.
Right? But then I realized the most important thing was to make it a daily habit. I started with just 15 minutes every day.
15 minutes? That's such great advice. What did you do in those 15 minutes?
I focused on listening first. I would listen to simple English conversations, maybe podcasts like this one, or easy YouTube videos. The key was to listen to things I could actually understand.
That's so smart. A lot of people try to listen to things that are too difficult.
Exactly. I learned that the hard way. I used to watch movies with no subtitles and understand maybe 10%. It was so frustrating.
Oh no. So what changed? How did you find the right level?
I started using English learning apps. They were perfect because they gave me content at my exact level. I could understand about 70 or 80%, which felt just right.
That's the sweet spot. Which apps did you like best?
I tried several, but I really liked the ones that combined listening and vocabulary. They would play a short conversation and then teach me the new words from that conversation.
That sounds really practical.
Yes, and the best part was that I could use them anywhere, on the bus, during lunch break, even while walking my dog.
I love that. So you made it part of your regular day. But listening is just one part. How did you start speaking?
Oh, speaking was scary at first. I was so worried about making mistakes. But you know what I started doing? I would talk to myself in English.
Really? Like out loud?
Yes, I felt silly at first, but it really helped. I would describe what I was doing during the day, like, now I'm making coffee or I'm getting ready for work.
That's brilliant. You were practicing real, everyday conversations.
Exactly. And then I started reading out loud, too. I would read news articles or stories, and it really helped with my pronunciation.
Pronunciation is so important. Did you have any specific challenges with that?
Oh, yes. Some sounds were really difficult for me. The th sound was my biggest enemy.
Ha, I think that's everyone's enemy.
Right? I watched so many YouTube videos about tongue position and practiced in front of the mirror. I probably looked crazy, but it worked.
Whatever works. And speaking of YouTube videos, I know you use them a lot for learning. What kind of videos did you watch?
I started with English learning channels, but then I moved to regular English content about topics I was interested in. I love cooking, so I watched cooking videos in English.
That's so smart. You were learning English and learning about something you enjoyed.
Yes, and I learned so much vocabulary that way. Kitchen vocabulary, cooking verbs, ingredient names. It was much more natural than memorizing word lists.
That brings up a great point about vocabulary. How did you remember all those new words?
I kept a vocabulary notebook, but not just for translations. I wrote example sentences and tried to use each new word in my daily English practice.
So you were actively using the words.
Exactly. I learned that just memorizing isn't enough. I had to use the words in context. Sometimes I would challenge myself to use 5 new words in conversations with myself.
That's such a creative approach. Now I have to ask, how did you stay motivated? Because learning a language can be really challenging.
That's a great question. There were definitely times when I wanted to give up. Some days I felt like I wasn't improving at all.
Yeah, those plateau moments are tough.
Right. But what helped me was celebrating small wins, like when I understood a joke in an English movie, or when I had a conversation without stopping to translate in my head.
Those moments are so exciting. The first time you think in English instead of translating?
Yes. Oh my goodness, that was such a milestone. And I also set very small, achievable goals. Not, I want to be fluent, but I want to learn 10 new words this week.
That's so important. Big goals can feel overwhelming. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting their English journey?
First, don't try to be perfect. Make mistakes. They're how you learn. And second, find content you actually enjoy. If you hate the news, don't force yourself to read news articles.
That's such good advice.
And most importantly, be patient with yourself. Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Take it step by step, day by day.
I love that. Emma, this has been absolutely wonderful. Your journey is so inspiring, and I know our listeners are going to get so much value from your tips.
Thank you so much for having me. And to all the listeners out there, you can do this. Just remember to enjoy the process.
That's beautiful advice, Emma. Before we wrap up, I'm curious about something. You mentioned watching cooking videos. I'd love to hear more about how you combined your hobbies with English learning. That seems like such a natural way to stay engaged.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. That was honestly one of my best discoveries. You see, when I started watching cooking videos in English, I wasn't even thinking about it as study time. I was just following recipes I wanted to try. But without realizing it, I was learning so much functional language. Words like simmer, whisk, fold in the ingredients. These weren't words you'd find in a typical textbook, but they were words I actually used.
That's fascinating. So you were learning practical vocabulary that you could immediately put to use in your own kitchen. Did you find yourself talking through the cooking process in English?
Exactly. I started narrating everything I was doing in the kitchen. At first, I felt ridiculous talking to my vegetables, but it became this wonderful habit. I'd say things like, now I'm chopping the onions finely, or I need to let this sauce reduce for 10 minutes. It was like having my own private cooking show, except I was the chef and the commentator. My family thought I was a bit crazy at first, but they got used to it. And the best part was that I was practicing grammar structures naturally. Past continuous, present perfect, future tense, all while making dinner.
I love that image of you hosting your own cooking show. That's such a creative approach. Did you apply this same strategy to other areas of your life? What other hobbies or interests did you use to practice English?
Oh, yes. I'm also really into gardening, so I started following English gardening channels on YouTube. I learned about different plant varieties, seasonal care, pest control, all in English. And then I joined online gardening forums where people shared pictures of their gardens and asked for advice. At first, I was just reading the posts, but eventually I started commenting and asking questions myself. It was terrifying at first, but people were so helpful and encouraging. Nobody ever criticized my English. They were just excited to help with gardening problems.
That's such a brilliant point about online communities. You found a safe space where the focus was on the shared interest, not on perfect English. I imagine that made it much less intimidating to actually start writing and participating. Can you tell us more about overcoming that initial fear of making mistakes in front of other people?
That fear was probably my biggest obstacle. I was so worried about looking foolish or being judged. But here's what I realized. When someone asks me a question in my native language, I'm not sitting there judging their grammar. I'm trying to understand what they need and help them. Most people online are the same way. They want to share their knowledge and connect with others who share their interests. I started with very simple comments like, beautiful flowers, or thanks for sharing. And gradually, as I saw that people responded positively, I got braver about writing longer responses and asking more complex questions.
That's such wise perspective, focusing on the communication rather than perfection. Now, Emma, I'm curious about the more challenging periods in your learning journey. You mentioned there were times when you wanted to give up. Can you share a specific example of a difficult moment and how you pushed through it?
I definitely remember one particularly tough period. It was about a year into my learning journey. I had been making steady progress, but then I hit this wall where I felt like I wasn't improving anymore. I was understanding more, but when I tried to speak, I still felt so clunky and slow. I remember having a conversation with a native speaker at a coffee shop, and afterwards I was so frustrated because I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but I couldn't express it fluently. I went home that day and seriously considered quitting. I thought maybe I was just not cut out for learning English as an adult.
That sounds so frustrating. That feeling of having thoughts trapped in your head but not being able to express them fluently. I think every language learner knows that struggle. So what happened next? What helped you get through that difficult phase?
Well, I gave myself a few days to feel sorry for myself, which I think is important, by the way. Sometimes you need to acknowledge the frustration. But then I decided to change my approach. Instead of focusing on what I couldn't do, I started keeping a wins journal where I wrote down one good thing about my English every single day. Maybe it was understanding a joke in a TV show, or successfully ordering something complicated at a restaurant, or even just pronouncing a difficult word correctly. Some days the wins were tiny, but they were still wins. And slowly, I started to see that I was actually progressing, just not in the dramatic way I had expected.
A wins journal. I absolutely love that idea. It sounds like you learned to celebrate progress rather than demanding perfection. That's such an important mindset shift. For our listeners who might be in a similar challenging phase right now, what other strategies would you recommend for staying motivated during those plateau periods?
I would say first, change your routine. If you've been doing the same type of practice every day, shake things up. Try a different genre of content, switch from reading to listening, or find a new way to practice speaking. Sometimes our brains just need a different kind of stimulus. Second, connect with other learners. I joined online English learning groups where people shared their struggles and victories. It was so reassuring to know I wasn't alone in feeling stuck sometimes. And third, go back to your why. Why did you start learning English in the first place? For me, it was to be able to travel more confidently and connect with people from different cultures. When I remembered that bigger purpose, the daily frustrations felt smaller.
Those are fantastic strategies. I especially love the idea of remembering your why, that bigger purpose that started the whole journey. Emma, you've mentioned so many different resources and methods throughout our conversation. If someone asked you to pick just 3 things that made the biggest difference in your English learning, what would those be?
Oh, that's a tough question, but I think I can narrow it down. First would be consistency over intensity. 15 minutes every single day beats 3 hours once a week, every time. The daily habit was what really built my foundation. Second, I'd say immersing myself in content I genuinely enjoyed. When learning feels like entertainment rather than work, you naturally spend more time doing it. And third, and this might sound strange, learning to be comfortable with confusion. I stopped expecting to understand everything immediately and started embracing that feeling of, I don't quite get this yet, but that's okay. That mindset shift made everything less stressful and actually helped me learn faster.
Being comfortable with confusion, I think that's profound advice that applies to so much more than just language learning. Emma, as we start to wrap up our conversation, I'd love to ask you about where you are now in your English journey. Do you consider yourself fluent? And what are your current goals?
Fluent is such an interesting word. I feel confident in most English situations now. I can have deep conversations, understand movies without subtitles, read complex articles. But I'm still learning. There are always new expressions, cultural references, or specialized vocabulary in different fields. I think fluency isn't about perfection. It's about being able to communicate effectively and express yourself authentically. My current goal is actually to start giving presentations in English at work. That's my next challenge, moving from casual conversation to more formal, structured speaking. And I'm excited about it rather than terrified, which I think shows how far I've come.
I love that definition of fluency. Being able to express yourself authentically rather than perfectly. And how exciting about the presentations. That's such a concrete next step. Emma, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Any final words of encouragement or perhaps a resource you haven't mentioned yet?
To anyone listening who might be feeling discouraged, your English is probably better than you think it is. We're often our own harshest critics. Start noticing what you can do in English, not just what you can't do yet. And remember, every native speaker was once a beginner too. We all make mistakes. We all have moments where we can't find the right word. The goal isn't to sound like a native speaker, it's to sound like you, but in English. Embrace your unique voice, your perspective, your experiences. That's what makes conversations interesting and meaningful. Oh, and one resource I love that I haven't mentioned, language exchange apps where you can practice with real people. There's nothing quite like authentic conversation practice.
Perfect words to end on. Thank you, Emma, and thank you to all our wonderful listeners. Remember, every day you practice is a step forward on your English journey. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in yourself. We'll see you next week for another episode of Fluent Talk Podcast. Until then, keep practicing